What's going on, guys? One of the things that I love about covering Bitcoin is that you really just never know what you're going to have to talk about that day. You wake up, you think it's all going to be about Gary Gensler being a jerk, but it's not. Instead, it's about a tiny Asian kingdom buying Bitcoin unannounced to the world for years to the tune of millions of dollars. Yes, we are talking today about Bhutan, the Kingdom of Bhutan, and its sovereign wealth fund, which has apparently been buying Bitcoin. Now, for those of you who have heard of Bhutan, it might be because they've made waves with their idea of gross national happiness. Gross national happiness is an alternative measure of the success of the country that isn't just focused on GDP. So it focuses on things like sustainable and equitable socioeconomic development, good governance and equality before the law, ecological sustainability, preservation and promotion of a free and resilient culture. So these are things that this idea really captured people. It got people excited about Bhutan. However, a Forbes article came out today. The tiny kingdom of Bhutan secretly held millions of dollars in cryptocurrency. Now, we're going to come back to this whole piece, but just so you guys have a sense of the organization at the center of it, it is their sovereign wealth fund. Druk Investments is about holding assets of the kingdom, about owning companies directly, about investing in other companies, and apparently about investing in crypto. So this Forbes research piece comes out and it says that Bhutan's $2.9 billion sovereign investment arm was or is a crypto buyer. The reason that we know this is that they have claims against BlockFi and Celsius. So there are a few different parts of this story. One has to do with BlockFi. BlockFi apparently accused Druk, of defaulting on a $30 million loan. The claim said that in February 2022, Druk agreed to borrow 30 million USDC, but then failed to pay it back, even after it had its collateral, which was about 1888 Bitcoin, worth 76.5 million at the time, liquidated. The CEO of Druk said, "We do not have any comments as the matter with BlockFi has been settled. We are not able to comment due to confidentiality." Now, Druk was apparently also an institutional customer at Celsius, which we found out when, in October, Celsius released more than 14,000 pages of user data that included things like names, addresses, and transactions. During the period that's covered in that Celsius filing, Druk withdrew more than 65 million and deposited nearly 18 million. Some are suggesting that because this all happened within 90 days of Celsius's bankruptcy, it is possible that they try to claw back some of these holdings. So there are a few different takes on all of this. The first is the got wrecked kind of side. Alex Gladstein writes, "So Bhutan's king tried to design a CBDC on XRP, traded tens of millions on Celsius, and lost nearly 2,000 Bitcoin trading on BlockFi. Royally wrecked." And indeed, it is pretty brutal where these guys have gotten their resources caught up, but there were a lot of people who were in that same situation last year. The other side of this, though, is that if it is true that the sovereign wealth fund invested directly into crypto assets, Forbes says it would appear to be the first to directly own Bitcoin. That's the pull quote, which you can see right here as well. And that, of course, is the part of this that many, many more people are latching onto. Dory says here, "Just learned about Bhutan Sovereign Wealth Fund's quiet accumulation of cryptocurrency, which could spark a trend for countries to prepare Bitcoin as a reserve asset." Now, this is something that's been a discussion for quite some time. You can go back and see articles in 2021 about pensions and sovereign wealth funds eyeing crypto. You can see last year even Kevin O'Leary, who is not necessarily the most respected source of information right now, saying that sovereign wealth funds want Bitcoin, but just don't buy because of regulatory uncertainty. You also have this cascading or interacting with a much wider de-dollarization narrative. This is something we've talked a lot about on the show recently, that this idea of de-dollarization, of the US dollar's role as the world's reserve currency being threatened, is really picking up steam in America. There's a lot of contentiousness around that issue and contentiousness around the people who are making it an issue, which is obviously a little bit out of scope for today. But I think that even the folks who are not convinced that the dollar is going to somehow give up that role as the world settlement currency for trade are noticing that more and more central banks and governments are looking to diversify away from the US dollar. That has only increased as the US dollar has gotten more weaponized over the years. Now, is Bitcoin going to play a role in that? Obviously, there are many of us in the space who feel like it's pretty inevitable that it does. And so when we read about this idea of a sovereign wealth fund in Bhutan being one of the first or the first to invest directly in Bitcoin, it does seem not just to be a one-off, or our bet, I guess you would say, is that it is not just a one-off, but is representative of something which, if not yet a trend, could be in the future. Nick Carter says, I always thought the Kingdom of Bhutan would be the one to kick off hyper-Bitcoinization, which is obviously tongue-in-cheek, but there is something interesting here. And I think that if you were trying to understand how much should you be paying attention to this, put it in two buckets. The first is what it means for a specific government, in this case of Bhutan, to invest directly in Bitcoin, but then also think about the larger trend pattern that it might represent. Will we see more sovereigns put some allocation into Bitcoin? It kind of feels like in a world where even if the dollar does remain supreme, it's not without its critiques, and it's at least in part because there just aren't other good options. In that world, Bitcoin looks pretty appealing. Anyways, guys, fun little one for your afternoon. Hope you are enjoying the day. This has been another Breakdown Bite. Until next time, peace.